Welcome to the ones that are joining us right now. We will start in just a minute. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock. Let's begin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. I want to welcome you all to this world-class webinar we've prepared for you. Today, we're going to talk about how blockchain is accelerating transformation in industries. It's a pleasure for me to introduce you our special guest and the keynote speaker, Sandra Ro, the Chief Executive Officer of Global Blockchain Business Council, board member of Global Finance, BitGift, SendFriend, as well as angel investor and co-founder of several tech startups across blockchain, robotics, digital assets, Internet of Things, and virtual reality and augmented reality. Today's agenda will be welcome words by Ernesto Kruger, CEO of Kruger Corporation, Sandra Ro's presentation, use cases by Francisco López, Chief Executive Officer of Kruger Corporation, and at the end, we will have a little conversatory and questions and answers space. Please remember that in your panel, you have the chat where you can text us all the questions during the whole session, okay? So, Ernesto, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to this world-class event that GBBC and us we have prepared for you. It is a fact that the world we once knew has changed, and now we are living in a reality whose society has new habits and different needs. Now the customers are more conscious in the well-being of the others, and they demand for more reliability and transparency when buying. Technology has become our ally, and more precisely blockchain, an exponential technology that provides traceability, security, efficiency, and saving solutions in many industries. We are doing the things we buy come from. How are those things delivered to me? Is my information safe? There are a lot more questions we have and needed to solve. However, not everyone is sure about the steps to follow to start using this technology that can help companies in several ways, such as increase sales, be more efficient, and improve customer experience. I don't want to continue talking because today we have the honor to present an expert on the subject. It is an honor for me to introduce to my friend Sandra Ro, CEO on the Global Blockchain Business Council, where she serves the GBBC and the blockchain community to foster education and build bridges across enterprise, government, and startups to help fulfill the potential of the blockchain technology to solve real-world problems and help society. This is a new reality. It is an opportunity time to restart and make better choice. Thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge with us, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Ernesto, and the entire Kruger team. I cannot believe it was not even a year ago that I first met Ernesto in Quito, went to his headquarters, was amazed by what I was seeing Kruger accomplishing in the technology space. And I'm so glad that we have not only as you as a member and an ambassador for GBBC, but also we are able to collaborate in this manner. So I'm going to start off, if it's all right, with a few slides. And we're going to talk very broad, but then we're going to get very narrow about specific use cases. So I hope you all learned something today and are able to participate in the Q&A. So I'm just trying to share the screen here. Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
Can you load it up? Because it's not giving me the option to be able to share the screen.
Okay.
Here you go.
Okay.
Hold on. I think we're almost there. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful.
We can see your screen.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me know if there's any issues, but I will proceed. So we're going to talk today about really from an enterprise perspective. We live in a very fast-moving world, and frankly, there's a lot of change still forthcoming. Just a quick backdrop on GBVC itself. It is a Swiss-based nonprofit with offices in Washington, D.C., New York, Geneva, and London. We focus mainly on three main paths: education, advocacy, and partnership. And we believe we are helping to build the next multi-trillion-dollar industry with our multi stakeholders from around the world.
Sandra, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but we can't see the presentation. We can see just your computer, like the main screen.
The desk of your computer only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now we can see it. Yeah, thank you.
It would be helpful to actually see the screen. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. I've just got to, luckily, the slide here. That was what I was talking about with GBVC. Can you see advocacy, education, and partnership?
Yes.
Great. All right, now we're on track. So I'm going to quickly go through a question that a lot of people ask. Why blockchain technology? Why do people keep talking about this technology, and why is it important? And hopefully today we'll cover a few main areas for why it is indeed a very important, transformative and important technology. We'll talk about next generation payments and banking sector, as well as global supply chain and insurance. A key thing I think we need to think about is trust and truth and the fundamentals of how humans interact with each other. And in particular, when you look at a country, if you look at its institutions and how strong and resilient institutions are, they often are indicators of how much a country will prosper. And today, we seem to have a big trust deficit, not just in the US, but around the world. And it's not just the government, it's business, it's NGOs, it's media. We have a lot of issues that the public, the people, us, seem to have around our traditional institutions. And how do we build that trust back up? How do we make sure that we build strong, resilient institutions that work for the people? And believe it or not, blockchain has a role to play here. So when we think about blockchain technology, what is it? The way I simply explain what blockchain technology is that it is, think of it as next generation movement of data in a network that allows you to not only move data, but data as value. So what does that mean? Well, if you had a ledger system that now all of a sudden lets you move value or money as easily as you move email or send email, think about how transformative that is as a use case alone. How easy is it for us to move cross-border payments right now? We can do it, but it costs money, it costs time, and sometimes things go wrong. And these are things where blockchain technology can help not only remove frictions from a business perspective, but increase trust, because the reality is that you don't need, in a network that works well, in a blockchain network, you don't necessarily need to actually trust the other party. You could actually be able to function and maintain a network with the proper governance that allows you to do transactions with someone who you may not even know that well. And that's the beauty of how Bitcoin itself started with its underlying blockchain, which is the oldest, but there's many more. So when we think about how can an enterprise or how can a company or how can a government use blockchain technology, I think people need to ask a few questions first, which is, what's wrong with the existing solutions? What are the key problems? Who's maintaining the status quo? Is there a culture issue, a mindset issue more than a technology issue? How will this technology actually solve that problem? And is it enough to justify implementing such a technology and making that investment? Why doesn't any existing technology do the work already? I think, you know, there are roles for a single database to play. Not everything requires a blockchain. So I think those kind of critical questions are important to ask. And when you are deploying this strategy, knowing that blockchain technology is still evolving, it's been 10 years plus, but it's still rapidly evolving technology. How do you make sure that you are working with the right partners, stakeholders to really execute properly? And then what are the changes if you have customers? What are the changes that your customers or users going to feel? Is it going to be positive for them? Is it going to be cheaper for them? Is it going to be a better experience? And I think it's very important that the end user experience, they don't need to know if there is blockchain in the background. But what they should know is that it works better or you're offering improved services. So when we think about blockchain technology and digital value, as I mentioned, imagine moving money around digitally as easy as email. Well, it's more than that. It's not just payments. It's there are many use cases, and I'm just giving you a snapshot of the last couple years. And unfortunately, you know, like many emerging technologies, it's had also incredible hype. It's had a boom and bust cycle. And we are now progressing, I think, in 2019 into 2020 and beyond, a much more mature state of evolution. And this technology has already impacted across multiple industries and geographies, and it continues to grow. And so when we think about as it matures, you will hear more, you will see more of some of the household names adopting blockchain in various capacities. I think ultimately, what is success? What is success is when things are probably running on blockchain across mainstream everywhere, but yet most people don't even know. And let's face it, most of us have smartphones. We don't really understand how they run, but yet our smartphones work and our apps work. It's a very similar scenario. So when someone asks me the blockchain, what about the blockchain? Well, no, it's actually many blockchains. And for those of you who obviously are in the space, you know there are many, many, many different blockchains right now. A few are definitely more dominant. The public ones that are most well known are Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchains, but there are many beyond that. There are also private permission blockchains, and these are just a handful that I've mentioned here. When we think about the rise of enterprise blockchain in particular, sectors that I think are going to be very interesting to watch, and I've just listed a few major ones here: education, energy, financial services, especially digital money and payments, healthcare, government, media, supply chain, logistics, transportation. These all actually have a common theme. And the common theme is, how do you use blockchain technology to benefit whatever problem that you're solving for with increased transparency, increased trust, and truth in the record that you are recording. And these are very fundamental, basic things, which you would think maybe existing legacy systems can handle. And yes, some of them can handle them quite well. But when you're really looking to scale across multi-stakeholder, multi-level interaction, blockchain has many positive uses. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So let's get into payments and banking. Today, in a very efficient system, there are lots of efficient systems out there. Just to give you guys a sense of some of the numbers, you know, more than $6 trillion goes through the foreign exchange markets every day globally. Over 6 trillion. That's the latest BIS numbers. That is no small feat for that to happen. And the US dollar leg, I believe, is about 87% of every foreign exchange transaction. So when you think about how much actually goes through the existing pipes, you could argue, well, it does a pretty good job. And even through COVID, it is operated largely functioning. However, if you start drilling down, we see more and more opportunities for alternative systems. So this is not really around let's replace everything today. It's really a question around where are some major frictions and problems, and where can we help solve for some of them? And some of it has to do with the behavioral changes of the end user. So let's start with retail. People have started banking on their phones. 10 years ago, if you asked somebody to log into their bank account on their phone, they probably would have freaked out on you. But today, it's almost very commonplace in many countries. However, on the other side, you've got countries where banking is not a strong set of institutions, and people are not banked. I was just talking to a person over in a country where 80% of people are still unbanked in that person's country. And so they need different solutions. So why should they build costly existing infrastructure when they can leapfrog and build something more efficient? And that's where emerging tech like blockchain and the phone and other emerging tech can actually help leapfrog infrastructure, and it's much cheaper in the end. So in many ways, a country with legacy systems has a different set of problems to solve than a country with, I would argue, greenfield opportunity to really take a whiteboard and start from scratch and build on the latest technology. That's pretty exciting. So when I think about who's out there, there are names here that you are going to very much recognize because they are almost household names. But there's also been new entrants to the financial services markets. And whether it's trading or it's around stock exchange or security settlement or custody, all these areas are being innovated right now. And the question is how many of the big incumbents will embrace some of the emerging tech, which includes cryptocurrencies and digital assets and blockchain, and how many of these new entrants will become the next multi-billion-dollar companies. And if you think about companies like Coinbase, they've already become a multi-billion-dollar company. And Libra hasn't even launched their stablecoin yet, and yet they are already, advanced the industry into speaking much more frequently about the role of CBDC versus stablecoins, and that dialogue continues to evolve. So it is true. New entrants can definitely challenge incumbents, but not only that, it can actually change the discourse globally around how quickly we advance these topics. Because I will tell you, CBDC has been around as a topic for 5, 6, 7 years now, and it's really actually surprised me how much people talk about central bank digital currency when 5 years ago people were really not interested. So I'm going to skip to insurance. We'll go to global supply chain in a minute, but I do want to talk about insurance because I consider insurance also part of the overarching umbrella of financial services. So we have a company, and just for full disclosure, I'm also an advisor to this company, Evertas, and they focus on offering insurance and risk advisory, risk mitigation advisory support to those who are in the crypto asset market. The reality is that the market is growing, and yet the ability to insure like properly with coverage of theft and loss, amongst other insurance, is very difficult. And so they're looking to solve for that specific problem, and they see a massive market as crypto continues to grow to service this market. Now, what's interesting about Evertas is that they're actually working with some of the biggest insurance companies that are out there as well. And they are working diligently with the brokers, the existing insurance brokers, the existing insurance companies, even some of the reinsurers about how to deal with the crypto asset market. And in many ways, the pitch is this is another revenue stream, and frankly, it would behoove all of the insurance industry to look at how they service this new market opportunity. And it's not easy because you do need to have a certain amount of knowledge around crypto assets or digital assets to be able to service this. But again, young companies like Evertas are trying to bridge that gap with the incumbents. And they've done some market research related to how easy it is or not easy it is to be able to insure crypto assets. And as I alluded to in my other screen that had the many names of different companies in financial services, there is an increasing body of research that shows that more and more institutions are looking at investing in the crypto asset space. So it's still young, and still small relative to the other traditional asset classes, but there's increasing interest, everything from university endowments to pension funds to sovereign wealth funds to hedge funds across the board, asset managers. So it's a space to watch. I think there's a lot evolving. The other flip side of insurance is obviously, what can insurance companies do to help solve some of their own problems around claims, for example? And there's been some really interesting use cases. We just actually had the former crypto congressman out of Taiwan mention that actually they're working on a solution with a number of the Taiwanese banks to solve for insurance claims related to COVID using blockchain. And so I think what you're going to begin to hear more and more about is how to get efficiencies and transparency and validation that something is true to reduce insurance fraud claims, as well as to help then in turn reduce premiums and costs to the insurance industry relating to fraud over time. And I think that's a very interesting area for those who are in the insurance space. I'm going to switch over to global supply chain now. Similarly, we have our existing manufacturing, systems where there are lots of intermediaries. If you look at any global supply chain, the number of players, actors in the space that go from point A to point B to point C sometimes range in the hundreds. The aerospace industry alone, I think we had a conversation with one of the big airlines. I mean, manufacturing parts for them, it's several hundreds of different suppliers that they have to manage, and it can be quite difficult. And so again, as you drill down to specific problems, people are beginning to see where there are actual positive use cases for blockchain to help with everything from mitigating fraud around fake parts. Believe it or not, apparently people sell fake versions of different parts of an engine in an airplane. That's a little disturbing to me. And obviously the airline makers or airplane makers are doing their best to make sure that fraud is mitigated, but these things do happen. And I think what we all need to accept is that in any industry, in any network, there will be bad actors who will try to cheat or push the envelope of fairness. And the question is, do you have a network that can identify and effectively, boot out that bad actor quickly, as opposed to that bad actor in the system for a very long time? And that's one of the challenges, I think, of existing systems, is it's not very easy to find those fraudulent or bad actors quickly and deal with them. And I think this is where a lot of blockchain applications are trying to solve for different aspects of that in the life cycle. Again, there are lots of different applications for global supply chain, everything from identity management. We were talking to one of the largest metals and mining companies out of Australia, and one of the key problems that he would like to solve, believe it or not, is they have mining sites where people go on to the site and they're supposed to have credentials, and sometimes those credentials expire. Sometimes those credentials are faked, and hopefully it doesn't happen very often, but he would love an identity management system that actually helps manage everything real time, so that there is absolutely zero ability for someone to fake or use expired credentials to be able to get back onto a mining site. And again, there's many different applications beyond that. So I think global supply chain is the major field of potential applications. But one I want to leave you with, and I'm towards the end of my talk here, so we can address any questions people may have, is around One Belt, One Road. And you might ask yourself, well, Kazakhstan, that's really far away. What do we care about that? Well, we just had a session with the Astana, it was called the Astana Finance Days last week. And I think it is worth keeping an eye on with respect to global supply chain, because they're building out effectively a one belt, one road system that cuts out large pockets of the rest of the world, right? So you've got Europe, Russia, China, Middle East, and parts of Africa and India all linked up. But if you've noticed, the Americas are left out. And this particular established network could definitely change the way global supply chains operate. And in my view, they're also adopting latest tech as well as looking at digital currency. This is something that is a long-term project. The motivation is very high to get this done. And frankly, I think people should be looking at this from not only a trade perspective, but also what technologies get adopted. I think it's going to be a very interesting use case that evolves over the next number of years. 2020 plus, I'm going to give you some final thoughts here. There are a lot of benefits, and I think I've mentioned a lot of them, but there are also risks. And the risks I like to think about are not really, too technology focused. Yes, there are risks that people code things badly. I think the risks I see are mainly around, do we just recreate existing infrastructure and the same kind of like big five behemoth tech companies, giants that dominate everything, or do we create a different opportunity set? Do we allow for many thousands and tens of thousands of flowers to bloom in this space and allow for a much more equitable distribution of not only future wealth, but also of talent and opportunities? And to me, if we don't have that built into the DNA as people are pioneering and building, and this doesn't spread out across the world in many different countries, in many ways the technologists have failed to build something that's truly different and more equitable and beneficial for society. So to me, these are things to think about. Yes, there are the regulatory and legal challenges as well, but I think those are known and are being solved for. I want to highlight one final thing. How do we actually make this a multi-trillion-dollar industry that will grow? We're looking at standards. GBBC itself does not create standards. What we are looking at is an initiative to map the standards across the world, across three different verticals: technical, legal and regulatory, and business best practice and consortia. I'm not sure that people are aware, but there are over 200 plus business consortia related to blockchain across industries that have been formed. So we are looking to map that out. So step one of this report that we are working with a number of our partners is to map what's out there. We're going to try to pick up as many of the puzzle pieces as possible and see what kind of picture we get. And then after that, we'll come to some conclusions around where are the gaps, where are the conflicts, where are the overlaps, and where do we go from here? Think of it as a version 1.0 of the report, which will come out at the end of September, beginning of October. We are looking to make it multilingual. Maybe the first version will not be, but eventually make it multilingual, open access, completely free to the world. And when we want this data set to be useful for those who are wanting to learn more and also do research, and for their own countries where there may not be a lot of research available, to be able to use this as a sounding board or a starting place. And then I have a positive note for those who are wondering what's the opportunity set in digital economy. We've had a really hard time around the world with COVID, but I will tell you one thing: the digital economy is still growing. And so if you have any inclination at all to be a part of it, or if you already are a part of it, just look at these numbers. And I know LinkedIn is not the end all be all, but to me, I just always test the waters to see how much it's growing. I always Google or I search for on LinkedIn blockchain worldwide, just to see how many job listings there are. And between November of 2019, well before COVID, and even yesterday, I just checked it, we've gone from almost 15,000 down to about 11,000 or 10,671. But the reality is that's not bad considering how much is happening in the world today. It could be much worse, and to me, those numbers are going to go back up. And if just to give you a sense of what it was like about 7 years ago when I think I checked, most people didn't even have blockchain in their job description. There were very few descriptions of blockchain at all. And I think I would have been surprised if back 7 years ago there was even a couple hundred jobs related to blockchain. So it's come a long way, and there are opportunities. And then one more final thing, and this is about the digital divide, because we actually were fortunate to be able to actually go to the Vatican during a conference that they held in September last year, and the Pope spoke to us as well as the cardinals. They are very concerned that we are going to leave people behind with this digital divide. And I'm talking really basic things like infrastructure, access to internet, access to information. It's already bad as it is now. And what happens when the digital economy really starts taking off? And then you have people who have no access to this information and opportunity set. And I think as technologists and builders at all levels and government, we need to think about working with all sorts of organizations to make sure that we don't leave people behind and make that a forefront of our consciousness. I don't think it can be underestimated how bad we can make inequalities going forward in the next decade if we really don't make a conscious effort to close this gap. With that, thank you, and hand it over to Francisco.
Thanks a lot, Sandra. It's really a lot of very, very useful and insightful information that you give to us now. And of course, we can see now that the blockchain here is, well, transforming the world, really. So I would like now to show you guys basically some cases that we as Career Corporation has been involved lately. Okay, I will show you now. I'm thinking hopefully you guys are seeing now my screen. Okay, and well, basically we have been working with some companies, some partners that are looking to transform the world with the blockchain technology. Okay, and we did 3 cases basically the last year basically. Okay, one is the government about the land management we have been doing. Okay, another one that is very interesting also is the banana supply chain. That's very, very straightforward also. And the most recent case that we have been testing out in the waters in this pandemic is the food safety, or a case that is basically your order traceability for restaurants. Okay, so for the government land management, the client was a city local government, and the request was how to expose the information of the properties that are already being having in some silos, okay, and between some participants, especially government agencies, so they can be 100% secure that the information is integral, is really up to date, because that's something that you also always have in this kind of cases. You don't really have the information up to date, and it's kind of difficult going from local agency to local agency to see if the information is already done, or if you need, for example, as a citizen, to see and to prove something, for example, to get a loan on your home, for example, you will need information that will be up to date. Okay, so what the solution was in this case proposed and implemented was to have a private blockchain network that will allow to the participants, in this case the 3 government agencies, okay, to share the information and have it, okay, and of course to expose it to the citizens also. Okay, the technology that we use here was Hyperledger. It's a standard one. It's a basic online explanation now, and it's growing very interestingly. Okay, it's a technology that will allow you to build private networks and have it a very good control over it. Okay, the second case that we are going to show you guys here, to comment to you guys here, are the, as I told you before, the banana supply chain, the agriculture case. Okay, the thing is actually, for example, you will have many products that are really exquisite on how you will need to supply the information. Okay, the thing is actually you need to give your customers very specific information about how it's being produced, if you are being responsible with the supply chains, if you are, for example, putting all the effort, or for example, putting no chems on the growing of the plants, for example. Okay, so you need to be really specific and provide this information to your clients, okay, in a very opportune way. I mean, if you are going to the supermarket and would like to know, hey, this banana is really cultivated as it's supposed to be, as I would like to be cultivated, then you can, for example, in this case, take the banana, okay, and in the plastic bag that you will see packed that one, okay, you can take the number or the QR code and query for the information and see, okay, you can and you will in this case know, yes, this one, for example, was responsibly grown, for example, and the guys were paying to the agriculture people, or in this case, accomplished to any norm that you will need to be accomplished. For example, reduce have no childs in the farms, for example. That's a very important thing. So basically, you can prove with this to the guys, of course. So the solution was again a private blockchain network, okay, where the IoT sensors and some, for example, who's collecting the bananas will take photos and, of course, upload it to the blockchain. Okay, so you can register and see how this banana was being cultivated from the starters. Okay, from which, in this case, conditions of humidity, temperature, whatever you need in this case. Okay, uploaded by the sensors, as I told you, will be what's being cultivated, okay? And then, of course, this when it will be reached, especially to the end customer, also you can have in the middle participants, like, for example, any regulatory organization that will, for example, allow you to say, hey, yes, this is certified quality, or this, for example, is accomplishing with the payment taxes, or even though, as I told you, for example, any another organization that would like to certify that you're accomplishing with what we are looking to provide to your client. Okay, so again, the end user will in this case have an application, or maybe he can go to the website and put the number on the plastic bag, for example, and take a look on how this banana was cultivated. Okay, the last case that we would like to, in this case, as I told you, we were testing now, is for the food safety. Okay, there was a very interesting thing with this pandemic was that the people need to be psychologically safe. I mean, you are debating, for example, how your food is prepared, how your things are treated, and everything. Because yes, COVID has been hit hard in all the world, of course. So how you can, in this case, provide to your customers with a very good solution on how on being safe, are saying, okay, this food has really been treated with a lot of good cases, in this case, or measures that will assure me that this food is clean. Okay, thinking about the solution, that requirement, that necessity, we expand very fast solution with again a private blockchain where you can, with IoT devices and other mobile devices, capture how you're preparing your food, how the order is being prepared in the restaurant. Okay, so basically, you will have again when your order is being delivered, an SMS will let you know with a link to the report how your food was prepared. Okay, and this will, of course, endure in the time, so you can go back in and check if it was prepared as you asked to be prepared. Okay, so the participants here, of course, are some regulatory agencies. I mean, people who, in this case, check for this, the health and the security of the people. Okay, and the sanity of the restaurants. Of course, there's restaurants that are participating on these ones. Okay, and if you want to, as an end user, you can also host a node and have your wallet on your orders. Okay, that's of course, this is something that will happen hopefully not in a near future. Sorry, to you as a user have also your wallet on that part. But now for now we have the restaurants and the regulatory agencies having these ones. Okay, and this has been a very interesting case because it's helping a lot to the clients, to the end user, to be really safe on how your order has been treated. Okay, so again, we use it in this case for the three cases, basically the hyperledger. Okay, we have been very comfortable using this technology because it's allowing us to share all the information and also, of course, to produce very quick results with the clients. Okay, so these cases again, we have been involved in last year. Okay, and also now I would like to start a little bit of a conversation with Sandra about these cases and other cases that we have seen, for example, Sandra, maybe you have seen, for example, this kind of cases about food safety on blockchain around the world. This is something that is starting to have some traction in the community.
Francisco, Sandra, please, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but yeah, Francisco, could you please turn on your camera once again?
Of course, yes.
Okay, so that we can continue, and please, to the all attendees, don't forget that you can text us your questions in the chat. And okay, please, Sandra, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the very interesting use case. There are many different types of food tracking and tracing, sometimes for safety reasons, sometimes it's really, I think there's an increasing consumer interest in understanding where their food is coming from. It's not just food, by the way. People are also looking at luxury brands and luxury items to have tracking and tracing ability in terms of, are they using conflict minerals? Are they using conflict gems? So I think there's also a social impact element to why people are asking, both health reasons and for also social impact reasons. I will say the ones that I've heard of the most are related around tracing coffee. There's a company in the Netherlands who is helping to trace coffee, not only from the fields, but all the way directly to the coffee shop in, I believe in Amsterdam. So, you know, again, people say it's impossible. You cannot track all the way through. Well, people are attempting to do that through every link of that chain. It's a big chain.
Interesting, of course, and as always, us as an end user, we would like to see how it's going. Of course, in my personal interest, of course, is always to know, hey, these guys are doing what they are claiming to do. If they are, as you said, basically social reasons, maybe, or maybe are you paying a fair price, for example? There's something very interesting over there. And about the governments, for example, as you can see, we have been starting with the land management, but I think there is a very good possibility of having another thing. So, for example, I didn't mention in my presentation, but we are also now piloting some digital identity on blockchain. That's a very interesting thing. As you said, for example, in your presentation, it's a very interesting that you cannot really, first of all, the concept is that decentralized digital identity. So basically, you really own your identity. That's very interesting and very important because you no longer will have to, well, depend on other institutions to be verifying or anything. And also the counterfeit, for example, there was a lot of leaks on some identities lately. I mean, you can, in this case, falsify any identities to gain any profit or that kind of things. With these kind of technologies, we will promote basically not happening that, because you will, in this case, enforce and verify those identities against well, not a central, but a distributed blockchain that will let you know, yes, this identity, this guy is whoever is claiming to be. So I understand, I was researching a bit about these ones, and we are having cases also in Canada. I understand that in Europe also about these ones. Have you heard about this, or do you have cases that you are already following it?
In terms of identity?
Yes, in terms of identity.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of projects. Some of them, it's interesting, some of them are government sponsored, so meaning the government will still become the central authority of issuing your ID. And you know, most governments, they issue your birth certificate, they issue your passport, they issue your driver's license. So in many ways, some of them are just coordinating across different government entities and bringing that together. But there are other, I think, very interesting, the grassroots initiatives are the ones that I think are very interesting, which is around self-sovereign identity, meaning you own your data, you show the information that you would like, and the validation on that can be multiple sources. And you know, a classic example that people give is, why do you have to show somebody, if somebody asks you for your ID, on your ID, usually there is a lot of information. Sometimes there is your address, your age, your birthday, your height, your weight. I mean, there's a lot of different information, especially on a driver's license. Why should that always be shown to everybody? If they just need one piece of information, Why can't you just show that? If somebody needs to know you are over 21 in the US in particular to go to a bar, then that should be it. They shouldn't actually know your birthday or your address, right? And these are the questions that have come up, which is, can you control your data enough to only show the small bit of information that you need to actually show to access something? And can we get smarter about that? And I think those are very interesting topics.
Yes, you said, for example, and this one spells another questions, like, for example, if you already have digital identities and sovereign identities, can you go further? And for example, with those identities, go out to do and signing documents, for example, that would speed up a lot of things, really. And for this context in the pandemic has been something really necessary. And for example, Ernesto was, in this case, pushing for that ones, for example. It's very, very, very expected to go on that.
Yeah, and I'm going to quote a webinar we just did with one of our ambassadors to Estonia. He's the former president, Tuomas Ilves of Estonia, and he is the one who under his leadership, drove the digitization of Estonia to where they are today. And it's an economy of, a few million people. And as he said, they started off as a former Soviet state with nothing. I mean, they had very little. They were very poor as a country, and they've now transformed themselves into a truly digitized, digital functioning society. And he said that digital identity was actually the key to how to connect all the other services and pieces for them to offer. I mean, of course, there are many other ingredients like education, but he really did say that it was important for digital identity to be the gateway to the strategy for any country.
That's very interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were speaking, Francisco? I wanted
No, please
to
go ahead. Let's continue with the questions, I guess.
Okay, so Sandra, we have a question, and it says, how will be the future of blockchain with quantum computing? This question is from Yvonne Vernier from Grupo Vernier from Colombia.
I'm assuming he's talking about relating to the encryption, SHA-256 with quantum computing. Look, if encryption gets broken, we're going to have more problems than just blockchain technology. That means encryption, encrypted data across all technologies are going to be challenged. That quantum question has come up for many years. I frankly have seen it sort of die away in the last couple of years. I don't know if Ernesto or Francisco, you have a better view on quantum, but frankly, I've not seen that argument or that question in a while. It used to come up a lot.
Yes, and actually, well, first of all, quantum computer is something that is very, very fascinating. It will take a while for the quantum computer to come as a mainstream into our lives. It's becoming faster, I understand that one. But also in the part of the blockchain and technology part, there is also now designs to, in this case, overcome this problem. Because yes, it was foreseen that somehow, some way, in some time, the encryption will be happening to be, well, complete or really broken. But again, now are very good experiments and very good initiatives to be tamper-proof on that, in this part, on the quantum attacks. It's called like that, quantum attacks. So yes, I foresee that really that won't be something that will happen in a broad way. And as you said, if the encryption will be broken, well, it will be more than the blockchain that will be jeopardized, to be honest. Yes.
Yeah, I think we've got bigger problems than just blockchain. But yes, it's a very valid question. I do agree. I've heard of the countermeasures against, I guess, tamper-proofing countermeasures against quantum. Yeah.
Great. Let's get another question here. For example, well, this is on the computer. This one is in Spanish. Just a minute. How we can see? Are we seeing the Ecuadorian market prepared to generate communities that can adopt a blockchain technology? Yes, actually, we have very interesting cases here in Ecuador, not only in Ecuador, in Latin America. As we show you, for example, we have cases here in Ecuador There are very interesting cases spawning, and there is another cases in Colombia, in Peru. We are prepared. It's not really a cultural thing. It's a thing that the technology will help us to solve this kind of problems. That's the thing, actually. So yes, everywhere in the world you have things very prepared. There is cases, very, very interesting cases in other countries like Thailand, for example. They adapt the blockchain to do a kind of cryptocurrency. So, and you can say, hey, they have really hard time in these times, okay? But it is not really a matter of the community or even the culture, but the problems that we can solve. And yes, well, in Latin America and all the world, we have cases and we are prepared, I guess. Yes.
Another questions. What do you think about the crypto yuan?
Crypto yuan, the Chinese cryptocurrency, yeah.
Yes, so the panel last week, by the way, we had representatives from talking about digital yuan, digital ruble, and potential for digital Kazakh. So can you imagine, like, these three big countries on the other side of the world, and they're all talking about CBDC? I think a couple things we need to look out for China, and it's very interesting because they have at the highest levels very focused government, entrepreneurs, technologists, academia lined up together on not only is AI top strategy priority, but so is blockchain. And that includes digital currency, right? And they've already announced they will have the China equivalent of a national blockchain infrastructure, the BSN network. They also just announced, by the way, there's the China version, which will be compliant with Chinese laws and probably have, you know, some surveillance and other mechanisms in there. They're also building the international version, or at least that's been announced, which will be more, you know, open source, include lots of different parties. The question will be, the world needs next generation digital infrastructure, and the world will have that. But will it come from, and this is not a controversial statement, but will it come from China, US, Europe, South America? Where is it going to come from? Because it matters. And the reason why I say it matters is because I know technologists love to say technology is neutral. It has no like geopolitical or any, but it does. Depending on how you architect our next generation digital infrastructure, it will matter whether it has truly democratic values or open source values, privacy values. These are going to get built into the architecture of the platform, right? The infrastructure of the platform. And once it's baked in, it's going to be very hard. And also, who's going to have a right to make changes? Who's going to actually be able to have control over certain, you know, whether it's a voting power system or whether it's just simply making amendments? Who gets to control that? That governance piece is hugely important. And so depending on where it comes from or which group of countries or which group of people, it will be determined. And if that gets adopted and everyone builds on top of it, well, then there you go. That's your world digital infrastructure. So I think right now is a fascinating period of time because in the next few years, I think it will start taking shape. And maybe we'll have 2 of them or 3 of them, I don't know, but it's happening.
Thank you.
And the digital yuan is only one piece of that. There's much more to come. I think the digital yuan piece, every central bank will eventually have their own digital currency. Let's face it. I'm not convinced why certain countries need it, but if it solves for a real problem in certain countries, I think it makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. We have another question. This one's a little bit larger, but let me read to you. It says, one issue is that we are dealing with is the economy models for the implementation of the supply chain blockchain. How are your cost models structured for the organic banana blockchain? I know that AgriLedger was able to use the blockchain to allocate more of the payments towards the farmers. Is your blockchain a transparency model, which is just an additional cost basis with unproven economic models for value proposition, or is it a model for cost savings and payment distribution?
I think that's a lot of questions in one. So
That's
first of
from
all, I
Stan.
don't have a blockchain. Let's be clear there. There are many blockchains, as I said, and we will advocate for blockchains that fit the best solutions for a given set of problems. And every blockchain does actually seem to have a different flavor. So not every blockchain is appropriate for every use case. However, having said that, the part that I think is the most interesting out of that entire question set is around viability, sustainability. Many people created blockchains without a business model in mind, AKA, how are we going to make it sustainable? How are we going to make quote unquote money and make it profitable? I think those are actually important questions, because you can have the best intention to change the world and change business models, but you have to be able to pay for your network. You have to be able to engage for people to want to stay in your network, and you need people to pay for things. And this is also, you know, let's face it, this has been the social media problem as well, right? Which is why they rely so much on advertising, is they never quite figured out the right model for how do you get all of us to pay for stuff. And so I think the blockchain community is now going through iterations of experimenting on how to make that. And the most exciting to me, at least for me, that I'm looking at, is people who are experimenting with circular economy models. So meaning, I'm a founder with a bunch of other founders and we create a startup, but it's more like a cooperative. If you participate as a participant and you are active and you help me with marketing, distribution, or whatever it is, you're my best salesperson, you're not an employee of mine, you are a participant in my network, you get paid. This also works for musicians and artists and independents. A lot of people are looking at models where a musician or a filmmaker, they put out something into the web. If their distribution, in their fan base helps them to sell tickets or music, then they should get paid a tiny fraction of commission on that. And so this idea of a circular economy, I think really works, because guess what? We have tokenization. We can do that in a digital world pretty easily. And then we can actually automate a lot of these payments through smart contracts. Francisco gets a penny, Marcelo, Ernesto gets a penny, and Derek gets a penny. Everyone gets a penny for every single transaction. We have millions of these transactions, and everyone makes some money. I think that's actually pretty brilliant if we can make it work.
Thank you for your answer, Sandra. And we have one last question that says, well, a question for Sandra, touching on comment by the Vatican. How do you see we can mitigate the impact of the division these advancements suppose? By Daniela Safon from Portico Ingeniería, Colombia.
Yeah, you ask a really important question. I think we all have to work together. I will tell you right now, I used to be a banker in London. I never thought in my entire life I would ever be speaking to the Vatican in any capacity about technology. Just think about that for 1 second. But they recognize how important it is. And some people would say it's a human right to have access to information in the internet. I think we need to figure out how we work with not only the Vatican, but also our local communities, our government, and add connections across to make sure it is a topic that I think reality is governments need to fundamentally, local and federal, need to make it an imperative that everyone gets access to internet and the equipment that you need for internet. So if you don't have a phone, somehow we figure out how to get people phones and Wi-Fi, right? That's just point one. Another level is the education piece. What the Vatican is really worried about is you already have all this economic disparity, right? The rich are only getting richer and the poor seem to be getting even poorer. But you overlay the digital economy advancing even more. The very few elite and lucky enough to be in the digital economy do very well. What happens to the rest? And that's where we have to come up with solutions. And some of them are pretty basic. Like, how do we get electricity and internet access everywhere? But these are big problems. These are like fundamental problems. There are places where electricity and running water doesn't exist, right? So how do we have that happen? So it's not just about us coming up with our own software solution. It's we got to work with a lot of hardware, infrastructure, government, religious leaders. Here's a powerful thought, I think, and we were thinking about this. I'm not sure how it would work. The Catholic Church has the most extensive education network in the world. Think about all of the schools that they have. They don't have control over, but they have access to, right, as a distribution path. Imagine an education solution that gets distributed across that entire network. It's pretty powerful, right? Like, I'm not sure even in my brain I can quite imagine what that scale looks like. But these are the organizations that have influence and scale. We need to figure out how to leverage that in a positive way and also help them. So I think there are things that we can do. I don't have a full silver bullet answer for you, but I think also if you're interested, raising your hand and saying you're interested, let me know, because we're trying to bring more people from around the world to continue this dialogue.
Okay, thank you very much, Sandra. And well, thank you everyone for your questions and for attending to this webinar. I don't know if Francisco, you wanted to say something in the end, or can we conclude?
Just a few words. Basically, the future in this thing, as I said before, in Latin America and Ecuador, in really in the world, is very bright on this technology, because we have a lot of use cases that can be solved, and it's not something impossible, as Sandra told. It's basically we, as for example, with us Kruger and with organizations like the GBBC, we are pushing to deliver these solutions to everyone and be fair and expound these good things to everyone. So the thing is, actually, if you guys have some projects or some ideas on how to make this happen, we are all ears. We can help us and we can expand this product. So again, thank you for your time. So Ernesto, I don't know if you want to say something to close.
Yes.
Sandra also.
I want to thanks to Sandra for her generosity. Thank you, Sandra, and all the attendees for your time, and see you on the oncoming Kruger event. Thank you, Sandra, for all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ernesto. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, the entire team. And let's face it, you guys are a bright light in a lot of difficulty right now, but I will tell to people, be brave and start now. It's difficult times, but this is the time when you want to start things, because yeah.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you, Ernesto. And well, thank you, GBBC Council, and thank you, Keister, for all the support. Please, everyone, don't forget that you have to fulfill the satisfaction survey so that we can send you the webinar's recording. Okay, so thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.